What's going on, fellow A-plussers? It is I, your host, Adam Perez, back once again with a brand new episode review as we're finally going to be getting into The Mandalorian for you guys. Chapter 22. I unfortunately don't remember the name of the title for this particular week's episode, and I do apologize not being able to give you a live review this past Thursday. I have been making up some days at work, so I had to go back to the office. And unfortunately, Wednesday was just a very hectic and crowded day for me. So by the time I actually got the opportunity to sit down and watch The Mandalorian, it was rather late, and I wind up passing out. Maybe like 5 minutes into it, if you will, waking up towards the very end to see Bo-Katan with the Darksaber, and I'm like, what just happened? What did I miss? So I had to go ahead and certainly catch up. My girlfriend finished off the episode; she was actually pleased with it. So yeah, I finally got the opportunity to watch the episode today, and I said, Adam, get in front of this camera, deliver this review, and here we are, ladies and gentlemen. So we're going to be getting into chapter 22. So let's go ahead and do it, ladies and gentlemen. What I think we got like technically what 2 episodes left, if I'm not mistaken. Can I just say I really hope that they've saved the two best for last. Simply because while I definitely have enjoyed this ride for season 3 personally, this was certainly probably for me at least its very first kind of bump in the road. To be honest with you, while my girlfriend certainly enjoyed the episode, for me, I did not care for it. I'm always going to be honest and straight with you guys. If I'm excited about something, if I think an episode is good, I'm certainly going to tell you. I'm just going to be as fair as when I am not necessarily the biggest fan of a particular episode. And for me, that was this one. Not to say that I didn't find any good and enjoyable things in here. It's just an episode that I just did not care for, unfortunately. So was not the biggest fan of. Definitely had a little bit more cons in here, certainly than pros. But the pros I certainly did enjoy. For me, let's just cut to the chase, shall we? Okay, so like for me with this episode. First off, let's talk the cameos, okay? The cameos, maybe a little bit too much for me. 3 cameos in like one episode, that's fine. I kind of chuckle when I say something like that because technically I see stars on television all the time, right? Like Katie Sackhoff, I can believe her as Bo-Katan, though, right? I know Pedro Pascal's under that helmet from time to time, but he's covered with a helmet, right? I don't have to necessarily look at his face all the time. So while, yes, they are certainly celebrities themselves, the additional celebrities sometimes can kind of take away from this Star Wars galaxy or honestly pull me out of a particular episode from time to time. And the idea that we had 3 additional sort of celebrities in here just felt a little bit too jarring for my taste, honestly. And I'm fans of all 3 of them. Don't get me wrong. It just felt weird at times to see them in this particular setting, and I don't know, is that a thing? Is it like certain actors may not necessarily fit the mold of Star Wars? But I don't think that's necessarily the case either, because I do think Star Wars is such a huge sandbox that there's going to be plenty of variety of different, personality characters and stuff. And so, but like for me, Christopher Lloyd, I look, Christopher. I love Christopher Lloyd. Look, I'll let him get away with it for this one, but I will say one, Lizzo, great when it comes to music. Um, this really being her first acting gig, you could certainly tell for sure. And so listen, I would just say did not necessarily care for her performance in here. A little too cardboard boxy. I just didn't necessarily believe it, like I did the other actors, like a Jack Black, along with a Christopher Lloyd in here also. But it is one of those things like she definitely needs more work. I don't necessarily know if I would have put her on the stage as Star Wars as of right now and where she's at in her career as far as acting wise. But if I see more from her and she definitely improves as an actor, hell yeah, bring her back in. You know what I mean? But it was just very jarring for me to see just. I just didn't think she had the greatest performance. And with Jack Black is so tricky for me in the sense that I almost feel like he was too Jack Blackish. He does all these weird, crazy impersonations. So to kind of see him as Captain Bombardier with an accent, it almost felt like I was watching Jack Black play a funny Jack Black. And for me, I just did not believe him as a character. And so it just made that pairing just really difficult for me. Look, they definitely had some kind of funny chemistry from time to time. They definitely looked cute together as a couple and definitely had that chemistry. But it just it just was not, it just took me out of the episode, unfortunately. And it was hard for me to certainly get back into it, but I definitely enjoyed the Bo-Katan and Din Djarin aspects of the episode. Like for me, I really dug the idea of them being like two detectives, city cops, one good cop, one bad cop, right? Pulling him aside, like, what are you doing? Like, I kind of dug the whole like crime scene investigation, them chasing down the thugs sort of thing, right? So I really did enjoy that. Come to think of it, I really did. It just felt like that Law and Order stuff, True Detective meets the Mandalorian. So for me, in that aspect, the investigation of the story I thought was pretty great. Well, I can't say great, but it was certainly enjoyable. But overall, it is another side mission, right? Like, I do feel that the episode took way too much time on a side mission and then really only gave us hints of story that I personally feel was worthwhile, and that's really the Bo-Katan and Din Djarin, along with Wove and the rest of the mercenaries. You know what I mean? So it's like I had to sit through, 35 minutes of side story just to get to 5 to 10 minutes of what I really needed this whole entire time. And so, because of the fact I was already taken out of the episode, it sort of makes it a little bit difficult for me to certainly get there. Um, but regardless, so for me, I think the pacing of this episode was off. I think the direction by Bryce Dallas Howard, once again, I think she's a great director for Star Wars. Honestly, I would honestly feel comfortable giving her a Star Wars movie to go ahead and direct, because honestly, I feel like the ones that she certainly has directed, I've always enjoyed her work. Now, I don't necessarily think the script was as strong as it certainly needed to be. That's a more Jon Favreau problem, but I definitely do think that, if anything, Bryce certainly did her homework, man, and continues to certainly impress. Like, for me, the aesthetics of this episode I thought looked really, really great. The Restorator droid bar I thought was like the coolest thing, to kind of see like a whole bar full of droids, and especially hearing just the perspective of the droid in regards to the idea of like the what's happening to their droids making a bad name for the good droids, right? The ones that are just minding their business, but have been around for such a long time, and they're literally worried about sort of getting dismantled and sort of thrown into the scrap heap. And so it does, I think this episode did do a great job in just Star Wars overall, of just adding those overall layers to the thought processes of the droids. And how, look, I think the droids have always been such a huge part of Star Wars, and I think we all have our favorites that can certainly connect to them. But it's reasons like this, you know what I mean? That they have their personalities, they have, their own thought processes, and it's kind of cool to kind of see, their own fears about how this certainly might fall back on them, and then seeing the droid kind of help them out and stuff. There was a really cool aspect, I think, to that, mixed in with already with the true detective, Bo-Katan, the good cop, Din Djarin, putting his fist down. I don't know, but I really loved how that all honestly came together. So for me, I was a big fan of that aspect. But once they get back to getting Christopher Lloyd and stuff, and him explaining the story, and I'm just like, man, I'm just looking at him like, man, he's gotten really old. But like, he's doing his best that he can out there. And it's also like, I also got vibes of just Phantom Menace, in the sense that, were they just on a full digital screen? Like, it just felt at times that their entire scenery might not have been there. So I don't know if like they did anything different from this episode aside from using the volume. But there were at times in here where I was just like, man, are they on like a complete CG set? It just felt like very prequel sort of film, prequel sequel, prequel series sort of filmmaking, if you will. So very bright. Also, I was kind of surprised at how bright this episode was. But overall, I enjoyed what Bryce certainly did as the director in here. I'm trying to see if there's any other cons. I didn't care for the opening sequence. I feel like they honestly wasted 5 minutes of my life before getting the Mandalorian scene and actually seeing our main characters in here. So I was a little bit bummed about that. It just, the whole love thing and kidnapping the son, and he's technically hiding on the ship, and she's got to hand him over and stuff. The Mon Calamari, and I don't remember what alien species this certainly was, but it was just awkward. It was just weird for me, honestly. The I can't do this because it's a summer fling. Is that how you really feel about me? Like I don't care. Like I don't care about this. Like I get it that it's the idea that hey, you want to get us caught up as to where like Bo-Katan's mercenaries are, but I feel like you could honestly have accomplished the same thing without that entire first beginning of the episode. So it just was just off to me. Don't get me wrong. I have no problem with look, if aliens do what they do, you know what I'm saying? I'm not one to judge. I'm just simply saying that it was just weird scene for me, honestly. Just very disjointed from the rest of the story, and I didn't really feel like it was needed. So again, just more wasted time, just to fill up the screen. But yeah, other than that, also a little anticlimactic for me, But again, I think that's probably my own expectations in regards to how I expected Bo Katan to get the Darksaber back. It's one of those things where, um, in my head, I was envisioning, hey, we're gonna fight over this Darksaber to see who's going to be the one to bring in Mandalore, right? Like I thought the idea of Din Djarin, he was going to go ahead and go back to Mandalore and rejuvenate it and bring it back to its proper self, and he's going to be standing there with the Darksaber in his hand, sort of mentality, and maybe having some pushback from Bo-Katan, who's now sort of seeing the mythosaur. But that's not necessarily the route that they're going in here. So I was kind of expecting maybe that clash. I mean, who's to say it may not come up in the future? But I was kind of expecting that clash. And so while I understand the creed and I understand how she has technically rightfully won this dark saber, the idea of just handing it over willy-nilly just seems very anticlimactic for me. Like why don't you just hand it to her that same episode? Like, hey, you know what I'm saying? Like, you could have did that two, 3 episodes ago. But instead, he decided to go ahead and wait until, I guess, she was able to get her army on board, get people to certainly believe her as their leader. So maybe it was, I don't want to say plan, but maybe it was just something that Mando himself was certainly holding on to just a little bit longer, but just a little anticlimactic for me, So I got little pieces here and there that I feel like aren't necessarily nitpicks on my part, but I just feel, at least I don't feel like they're certainly nitpicks. It's just things that honestly took me out of the episode itself. But I will say, just if we wanted to really get to the details of this particular episode, the concept of Plazier 15, I thought was pretty interesting that the planet was rebuilt by ex-Imperial. That's Captain Bombardier. Also bringing up the program that the New Republic is certainly using in converting, if you will, the Imperial fleet to sort of the New Republic, and that's where Captain Bombardier certainly comes from in there. And really, his complaint is the idea that the droids are now malfunctioning. Hey, we need you guys to go ahead and solve this particular crime, if you will. And in return, which I thought was actually pretty neat, the idea um of what's the word that I use? Willing to vouch for Mandalore if they were in fact to revive Mandalore, have an actual leader of the Mandalorians, if they really wanted that to be a reality for them, that Plazier 15 would certainly vouch for them. And look, I guess while at the end of the day it certainly feels very side story-ish that may not necessarily matter, I think that right there is why the story certainly will. That in order for it to certainly be recognized by the New Republic, if that's, I don't know if that's a necessity. I don't necessarily think that's the same thing as like being linked up with them. Maybe they can still be an independent planet, but just the idea of like, hey, we are within at least this New Republic. I don't know how that works, but anyway. The idea of Plaisir 15 vouching for them certainly will come in handy when it comes to them gaining back their homeworld. Didn't really care for the droid special effects during the chase. The concept of the chase was pretty cool, but the special effects in here at times for this episode just did not come through for me. But again, I did put the idea that I love seeing them as a team. Really dug sort of how well they certainly work together. And I thought the concept of Nampath was pretty interesting, right? A lubricant that protects against wear, but also patches sort of the programming. I thought that was actually a pretty cool, creative way to showcase themselves. Quick honorable mentions. Ugnaughts were in this episode, so wherever you're at, Quill, we miss you. R.I.P. My guy. I have spoken. I love the idea that he references Quill, and it's almost like all the Ugnaughts just know each other, or maybe they all come from that planet and they know him, or maybe they're all related in some way. I have no idea how that certainly works, but the moment he dropped that name, everybody was certainly paying attention. Um, and I love their confidence in the idea that they were like, our droids are not malfunctioning, okay? Like, I don't know what you're talking about, but these rumors out there, they need to stop because we're freaking great at our job. I can promise you, our droids are fine. I have spoken. And so I love their confidence. And at the end of the day, yeah, it really wasn't their droids. It was the idea that the freaking Techno Union, my God, I haven't heard that since the prequels. I love the name drop from the Techno Union as we come to see that's where these particular droids that did carry sort of this programming certainly was from and part of the Separatist army back in the day. And the Christopher Lloyd character in here is the one that ordered those particular droids, and he finds himself to be a separatist supporter, even defending and name dropping Count Dooku in here. So I thought that was pretty funny before he just gets, shocked down to the ground by Bo-Katan in here. But cool name drop for Techno Union. Again, I feel like there's a lot of prequel influences in this particular episode, especially maybe with the way that it was filmed. I have no idea, but and also find it really fascinating that Grogu is knighted in this episode. So does that technically mean we need to call him Sir Grogu now? Is he like Knight Grogu of Plaisir 15? I need to know. Does he get a cape? Does he get a baby sword to now go with that? Or, if I need to ask John Favreau that question, somebody hit him up on a tweet. Does that technically mean now we got to call him Sir Grogu, or is that not how knighting certainly works? But I am kind of fascinated. I kind of want to see how that winds up turning out. But again, some aspects of this episode that I certainly enjoyed, others that I didn't. I will say the fight sequence at the end I thought was pretty good. If we want to end on a really good note here, the confrontation with Axe Wove. First off, huge garrison. Really impressed with what they've certainly put together, and especially seeing the Imperial ship that they wind up stealing in the previous season. Really great to certainly see that. The challenge was pretty cool. Love seeing Mandalorians facing off against one another. But fortunately for Axe, Bo-Katan certainly winds up getting the upper hand, and yeah, winds up getting the Darksaber. And just to kind of talk about Bo-Katan's character in here, for me, I really kind of enjoyed the idea of seeing her support Mando. That was definitely the way that I was kind of perceiving it as they were kind of going on their journey together, right? Really seeing this guy fully believing and having that commitment to this particular creed, and then having him allow her to come in and help be a part of this family and really kind of embrace sort of that spiritual aspect of her life once again. I love the fact that she has been admiring him, and really points out, similar to what we did, the idea that it's like he's more Mandalorian than any of us here, right? Like he's literally following the creed. I've seen what this man has been doing, and his devotion to the old ways certainly goes a long way for sure. So I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed to kind of see Bo-Katan's growth in regards to how she recognizes Din Djarin. And then, the moment of him handing over, which again, he's absolutely right. I mean, look, that's how he wind up getting it, right? By defeating Moff Gideon. So it makes perfect sense that it certainly would move over to Bo-Katan. So while very important and sentimental moment for the Mandalorians, in my head, I'm like, this is so anticlimactic. Not what I personally would want it, but again, that's just me holding it to my own expectations, and I don't feel like I do that very often. But for this particular moment, yeah, it definitely got the best of me here. But look, guys, again, at the end of the day, these are just simply my A+ opinions. I always want to know yours. What did you guys think of this particular week's episode? And I will say this: I do love the fact that we did revisit the concept of Din Djarin's really his displeasure of droids. I mean, the idea that this man was like stuck in like Droid City, it had to be hell for him. But I'm really glad that they wind up bringing up that tidbit of information. It's been a minute since they really highlighted it. But guys, that's it for me. At the end of the day, this is just my A+ opinions, but I want to know yours. Let your thoughts be known in the comment section box below, and we'll definitely talk a little bit about it more throughout the rest of the week until next week's episode. 2 more episodes left, guys, so let's see how they close out this episode. But yeah, let me know your thoughts. But until then, do me a big favor. As always, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and keep it A+. I'll talk to you later. Bye.